Too bruised to stand, Mara Ellis collapsed in the middle of a mafia meeting, and the man everyone feared was the only one who reached for her. Cold marble rushed toward her face. Ethan had brought her to Cross Tower as payment for a debt she never made, dressed her like a gift, and warned her not to speak. Across the table sat Adrian Cross, Philadelphia's most dangerous crime boss, watching every tremor she tried to hide. But this is not just a story about a powerful man saving a broken woman. It is about the moment fear begins to look different from protection, and the price of choosing safety after survival has stolen your voice. Stay to the end, because Mara's final decision changes everything. Like the video and tell us in the comments what city or country you're watching from. 6 hours before Adrian Cross caught her, Mara Ellis stood barefoot in a South Philadelphia bedroom and tried to remember how to breathe without making a sound. Rain pressed against the windows in thin gray sheets. It blurred the row houses across the street until they looked like unfinished memories, their brick walls melting into the wet afternoon. Somewhere below, a delivery truck groaned through traffic. A horn sounded twice. The city kept moving because cities always did, even when one life had narrowed to a locked apartment, a black dress, and the careful measurement of pain. Mara held the edge of the dresser and lowered her foot into a narrow black heel. The movement pulled at her left side. Pain flashed beneath her ribs, clean and white, then settled into the deeper ache that had been living there for 2 days. She froze, with one hand wrapped around the bedpost, and waited for the room to steady. In the mirror, the woman staring back at her looked composed from a distance. The dress helped. Ethan had chosen it that morning. Black satin narrow straps, a low back, the kind of dress designed to make a woman appear expensive without asking whether she could breathe inside it. It covered most of the bruising on her hip, though one dark edge still showed when she turned. Concealer softened the mark near her jaw. Powder hid the yellowing fingerprints along her neck until the light struck from the wrong angle. Nothing hid the exhaustion in her eyes. Mara leaned closer to the mirror. 27 years old, she thought. She looked 40. No, not 40. 40 could still look alive. She looked erased. The bedroom door opened behind her. Ethan Cross stepped inside while fastening a silver cufflink. He wore a midnight blue suit with a white shirt and no tie yet. His hair was combed back. His face was freshly shaved. To anyone passing him on the street, he would have looked like a man on his way to a charity dinner or a board meeting. That was Ethan's most useful talent. He looked harmless under good lighting. His gaze moved from Mara's face to her shoes. "What are you doing, putting them on? You have been putting them on for 10 minutes. Mara looked back at the mirror. "I am almost ready." He walked toward her. The bedroom seemed smaller with every step he took. "You said that 10 minutes ago." She could smell peppermint on his breath. He had been chewing gum since noon, replacing one piece with another whenever the flavor faded. Beneath it was the sharp scent of whiskey, though he had not poured a drink in front of her. Ethan stopped behind her and studied her reflection. "You look tired." Mara kept her hands flat against the dresser. "I am tired." His expression changed, only slightly, a narrowing around the eyes, a stillness in the mouth. The tiny signals most people missed because they arrived before the smile disappeared. His fingers closed around her chin. That was not an invitation to complain. He turned her face toward the window. The movement stretched the bruised muscles along her neck. Mara swallowed a sound before it escaped. Ethan examined the makeup near her cheek. "You did not blend this." "I did." "No, you covered it. That is not the same thing." His thumb pressed against the bruise beneath the concealer. The pressure was light enough to leave no new mark. It was also exactly hard enough to hurt. Mara stared into the mirror and refused to blink. Ethan watched her closely, waiting for something. A flinch, a tear, a plea. She gave him none. He had taken so many things from her over the last 2 years that she had begun protecting the smallest ones, the shape of her silence, the direction of her gaze, the right to decide when pain became visible. His thumb moved away. "Better," he said. Mara did not ask what he meant. Ethan adjusted one strap of her dress and smoothed the fabric over her shoulder. The gesture looked intimate in the mirror, a man helping his girlfriend prepare for an important evening. His fingers passed directly over the bruise he had made near her collarbone. She felt him notice the swelling. He did not apologize. Instead, he pulled the strap higher. Cross expects elegance. Mara looked at him through the mirror. Does he? Ethan's hand paused. The question had come out before she could stop it. He tilted his head. What did you say? Nothing. No. You said something. Mara lowered her eyes. I asked if he expects elegance. For a moment, Ethan said nothing. Rain whispered against the glass. Then he smiled. It was the smile he used when strangers were present, though there were no strangers in the room. You do not need to worry about what Adrian Cross expects. Then why am I going? Because I told you to. That is not an answer. His hand closed around her upper arm. The fresh bruise there had not yet darkened. Pain shot toward her shoulder hot enough to make her knees weaken. Ethan leaned close to her ear. You are going because I need you beside me. You are going because appearances matter. You are going because after everything I have done for you, the least you can do is stand in a room and keep your mouth shut. Mara watched his face in the mirror. Everything he had done for her. He had said those words when he took control of her bank account, when he convinced her to leave her bookkeeping job because the men there looked at her too often, when he stopped inviting her sister over because family created unnecessary tension, when he changed the code on the apartment door, when he kept her phone for 3 days after she tried to call a friend. Each act had arrived wrapped in concern. I am protecting you. I am helping you. You make bad decisions when I am not there. By the time his hands became violent, the doors had already closed around her. Mara turned slowly. What kind of meeting is this? Ethan released her arm. A private one, with a man you are afraid of. The smile vanished. I am not afraid of him. You have changed your shirt 3 times. His face tightened. Mara understood the mistake as soon as she saw it. Ethan stepped closer. She braced for the strike. It did not come, not because he had decided against it, because he needed her face untouched. That realization felt colder than the rain outside. He took one long breath through his nose, then reached for the tie lying across the bed. You think you understand what is happening because you hear half a phone call from the hallway. I hear enough. You hear noise. I heard the number. Ethan stopped. Mara wished she had kept silent. His gaze sharpened. What number? She stared at the knot in the wooden floor near his shoe. 4.2 million. The room changed. It was not visible. Nothing moved. The rain did not stop. The walls did not shift. Still, the air between them became dangerous. Ethan held the tie in both hands. Who were you talking to? No one. Who did you call? I did not call anyone. He crossed the room and grabbed her wrist. Mara's pulse jumped beneath his fingers. Do not lie to me. I heard you in the kitchen. When this morning, with whom I do not know. His grip tightened. The bones in her wrist ground together. Mara kept her voice even. You said the money was gone. His eyes searched her face. You misunderstood. You said Cross would tear the city apart looking for it. I was speaking figuratively. You said he found the accounts. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. For several seconds, he looked less like an angry man than a man standing at the edge of a roof. Mara had seen fear in him before. Small fear, fear of appearing weak, fear of losing attention, fear of being laughed at. This was different. This was the fear of consequence. He released her wrist and turned away. You do not know what you heard. Then explain it. He laughed once. The sound was empty. You want an explanation? Yes. All right. He began fastening his tie with quick, jerking movements. Cross invested in a riverfront development. There were problems with the property records, problems with zoning, problems with contractors. That happens in real estate. Mara watched his hands. The knot came out crooked. You told him you owned the property. I controlled the acquisition. You told him the permits were approved. They were supposed to be. You told him construction would begin in March. Ethan stared at her. Mara knew more than he had realized. She had spent 7 years working with invoices, land records, subcontractor agreements, and construction budgets. Before Ethan decided her job required too many late evenings with male colleagues, she had known how to recognize a false vendor before most auditors opened the second page. She had seen the documents on his desk. Shell companies with nearly identical mailing addresses, deposits split across several accounts, transfer dates that matched nights Ethan returned home smelling of liquor and expensive perfume. She had not said anything. Survival had made silence a profession. The development never existed, she said. Ethan moved toward her again. Mara stepped back until the dresser pressed against her spine. It existed. Only on paper. You have no idea what you are talking about. I know what duplicated parcel numbers look like. His nostrils flared. For one terrible second, she believed he might forget the makeup, the dress, and the meeting. Then his phone buzzed on the bed. Ethan looked at the screen. Whatever he saw drained the color from his face. He picked it up immediately. Yes. Mara could not hear the voice on the other end. Ethan listened without moving. We are leaving now. A pause. No, there is no problem. Another pause. His gaze shifted toward Mara. She is with me. The call ended. Ethan remained still for a moment, phone held against his palm. Then he straightened his jacket. Get your coat. Mara looked toward the closet. You told me the coat ruined the dress. It does. It is 38 degrees outside. We are walking from the car to the lobby. Mara reached for the long wool coat anyway. Ethan snatched it from her hand and threw it onto the bed. I said no. The motion pulled her attention to a dark leather bag near the foot of the mattress. It was small enough to carry documents large enough to hold cash. The bag had not been there that morning. Ethan followed her gaze. His body shifted between Mara and the bed. Shoes, he said. Mara lowered herself onto the edge of the mattress. The second heel was worse than the first. Her hip resisted the bend. Her ribs tightened. By the time the strap was fastened, sweat had gathered beneath her hairline. Ethan watched without helping. Stand up. She did. The room tilted. Mara steadied herself against the bedpost. Ethan picked up the leather bag. What is in that insurance? For whom he opened the bedroom door? For me. The drive downtown took 23 minutes. Rain turned the streets glossy beneath the early evening traffic. Headlights stretched across the pavement in long yellow lines. Pedestrians hurried beneath umbrellas. Steam rose from a street vent near Broad Street and curled around a city bus before disappearing into the dark. Mara sat in the passenger seat with both hands folded over her lap. Every turn pressed the seatbelt against her ribs. Ethan drove too fast, then slowed whenever he noticed a police vehicle. His right leg bounced beneath the steering wheel. He changed lanes without signaling. Twice he looked into the rearview mirror and cursed at a black sedan several cars behind them. Are we being followed? Mara asked. No. You keep looking back. I am checking traffic. You never check traffic. Do not start. Mara turned toward the window. They passed a restaurant where she and Ethan had eaten on their third date. She remembered candlelight white plates and the way he had listened when she spoke. He had asked about her childhood. He had remembered her sister's name. When a waiter spilled water near her hand, Ethan had laughed and helped clean it. For months she had searched her memory for the exact moment that man disappeared. Eventually she understood that he had never disappeared. He had simply finished convincing her. Ethan reached for the radio, then stopped before turning it on. The silence made his breathing louder. He is a businessman, he said. Mara looked at him. Who, Cross? She said nothing. People exaggerate. They hear a few stories and create a monster. You called him a ghost. I was angry. You said he owns half the police department. Ethan's fingers tightened around the wheel. I said he knows people. You said he has judges in his pocket. He has relationships. You said men disappear after missing payments. Ethan struck the steering wheel with the base of his palm. Enough. Mara stared straight ahead. The windshield wipers moved back and forth, never quite clearing the glass. After a minute, Ethan spoke again. His voice was lower. Men like Cross understand leverage. What leverage do you have? He looked at her, only for a second. It was enough. Mara felt something inside her go still. The dress, the makeup, the demand that she attend, the way he had spoken on the phone. She is with me. Mara looked down at her hands. What did you tell him about me? Ethan laughed softly. You think very highly of yourself. What did you tell him? I told him I was bringing proof of good faith. Her fingers curled against her palms. What does that mean? It means I am showing him I intend to make things right. With me. With everything available to me. Mara turned toward him. Traffic light washed his face red. I am not available to you. Ethan stared forward. The light changed. He accelerated. You live in my apartment. Because you made me leave my job. I supported you. You took my money. I managed it. You changed the locks to keep you safe. You broke my ribs. His head snapped toward her. The car drifted into the next lane. A horn exploded beside them. Ethan jerked the wheel back and cursed. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Mara could hear her own heartbeat. She had never said it aloud before. Not to him. Not to anyone. You broke my ribs. The words remained between them undeniable now that they had been given sound. Ethan's voice became quiet. You fell. No, you were drunk. I had one glass of wine. You became aggressive. You kicked me. You came at me. I was trying to leave. His hand shot across the console and closed around her knee. Mara gasped. His fingers dug into the deep bruise on her hip. The pain was immediate black at the center and white around the edges. Her vision narrowed. Ethan kept his eyes on the road. Listen to me carefully. Mara could not answer. You are going to walk into that building beside me. You are going to smile if anyone looks at you. You are not going to mention your ribs. You are not going to create a scene. You are not going to embarrass me. His fingers pressed harder. Mara tasted blood where her teeth cut the inside of her cheek. When Cross asks a question, you will wait for me to answer. If he speaks directly to you, you will be polite. If he tells you to remain there for a few days, you will do it. Her breath caught. A few days until I settle the balance. You are leaving me with him. I am creating time. You do not know what he will do to me. Ethan looked at her then. The expression on his face was almost curious. Does it matter? The question hurt more than his hand. Mara stared at him. Rainwater raced across the side window, breaking the city into silver fragments. Ethan released her knee. Do not be dramatic. Cross has women around him all the time. I am not one of his women. You will be whatever he needs you to be. Mara looked back toward the window. A strange calm moved through her. Not courage, not acceptance, something colder. She understood that Ethan had stopped pretending she was a person. Perhaps he had stopped long ago. The only difference was that tonight he no longer needed the lie. Cross Tower appeared several blocks ahead. It rose above Market Street in black stone and glass, its upper floors disappearing into low cloud. The building had once been a bank, Ethan had told her. Adrian Cross purchased it through 3 holding companies and converted the top floors into offices no public directory acknowledged. A bronze sign near the entrance displayed the names of shipping firms, investment groups, law offices, and property companies. None of them said Cross. The parking garage entrance opened before Ethan reached the gate. No ticket machine, no guard booth. A camera turned toward the windshield. The barrier lifted. Ethan drove underground. Rows of dark cars waited beneath white fluorescent lights. Most were black. None had visible drivers. The concrete walls were spotless, the floor dry despite the rain outside. A man in a charcoal coat stood beside a private elevator. He was tall, broad through the chest, and completely still. Ethan parked. For a moment he did not move. Mara looked at his hands resting on the steering wheel. They were trembling. Ethan. He flinched. What, you can still leave? He stared at her as if she had spoken in another language. Leave, drive away, and go where I do not know. They would find us before we reach New Jersey. Us. The word almost made her laugh. There had been no us when he bruised her. No us when he emptied her account. No us when he planned to place her in another man's hands. Now, with consequences waiting behind an elevator door, he wanted company. The man in the charcoal coat approached the car. Ethan got out quickly. Mara opened her own door. Cold air entered the garage and moved beneath the thin satin of her dress. Her skin tightened. She placed one foot on the concrete and stood slowly. The room tilted again. She waited. The man in the coat watched her. His eyes moved briefly to her posture, then toward Ethan. He said nothing. Ethan removed the leather bag from the back seat. We are expected, he said. I know. The man's voice was calm. He turned toward a black panel beside the elevator. A green light passed over his thumb. The doors opened. Inside, the elevator walls were polished brass. Mara entered first. Ethan followed. The man remained outside. 40th floor, he said. The doors closed. The elevator began to rise. The motion pressed Mara's weight into her injured hip. She shifted carefully. Ethan noticed. Stand straight. She looked at the brass doors. Their reflections stretched across the metal split by the narrow seam in the center. Ethan paced behind her. His shoes squeaked with every turn. "Did you hear me?" "Yes." "Then do it." Mara straightened by less than an inch. Pain moved beneath her ribs. Ethan stepped behind her and placed both hands on her shoulders as if arranging a mannequin. She inhaled sharply. His left hand remained over the bruise near her collarbone. "Do not start breathing like that. I cannot breathe deeply. You can when you are alone. I cannot now." He leaned toward her reflection. His face was pale. Sweat shone near his hairline. "When those doors open, you look at the floor." Mara said nothing. "You do not look at Cross unless he speaks to you." The elevator passed the 28th floor. "You do not interrupt me." 31st. "You do not mention the apartment." 34th. "You do not mention money." 36th. "If he asks whether you are here willingly, you say yes." Mara looked at his reflection. His tie was crooked. His pupils were too wide. The leather bag shook slightly in his hand. "And if he asks whether you hurt me?" Ethan stopped pacing. The elevator continued upward. He moved close enough that his chest nearly touched her back. "You tell him you fell." Mara watched him in the brass. "No." His expression emptied. "What I said, no." His hand clamped around her shoulder. Pain fired through her neck and down her arm. Mara's knees softened. Ethan held her upright. "You belong to me?" The words came through his teeth. Mara stared at their divided reflections. "No," she whispered. His grip tightened. "What did you say? I belong to your debt?" For 1 second she believed he would strike her. His hand lifted. The elevator chimed. The sound was bright, almost cheerful. Floor 40. Ethan lowered his hand. The doors opened. Cold air moved into the elevator. Beyond it waited a silent corridor covered in charcoal carpet. Frosted glass doors stood at the far end. No guards were visible. No voices carried through the hall. Ethan took Mara by the elbow. His grip was hard enough to leave new marks. "Smile," he whispered. Mara stepped out of the elevator. The carpet swallowed the sound of her heels. Each step sent a dull pulse through her hip. The overhead lights reflected in the glass walls. Somewhere nearby, coffee had been brewed recently. Its bitter scent mixed with lemon cleaner and cold-conditioned air. Halfway down the corridor, Mara's left leg began to tremble. Ethan dragged her forward. "Do not slow down. I am trying. Try better." The frosted doors stood open. Beyond them was a conference room larger than Ethan's entire apartment. A single walnut table occupied the center. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city below, blurred by rain and early darkness. 3 men stood along the walls, dressed in dark shirts and heavy boots. None looked at Ethan directly. At the head of the table sat Adrian Cross. He was reading. That was the first thing Mara noticed. Not a gun, not a glass of whiskey, not armed men or blood or theatrical menace. A stack of shipping reports rested beneath one of his hands. Reading glasses sat low on his nose. His white sleeves were rolled to his elbows, revealing thick forearms marked by old scars. The pin between his fingers looked too small. Ethan stopped 10 feet from the table. Mara stopped beside him. Adrian turned one page. The sound of paper carried through the room. Ethan cleared his throat. "Mr. Cross." Adrian continued reading. "I appreciate you seeing me." No answer. Ethan shifted his weight. Mara stared at the dark grain of the table. The cold entered her bones. She felt Adrian's attention before he looked up. It had weight, not desire, not curiosity. Assessment. He removed his glasses and placed them beside the documents. His eyes settled on Ethan, then moved to Mara. They paused at her face, traveled to her neck, her shoulder, the arm held too close to her ribs. Mara lowered her gaze. Ethan began speaking too quickly. "The Navy Yard project experienced a temporary title issue. My attorneys are correcting the records. I only need another 30 days to finalize the transfer." Adrian capped his pen. "Stop." The word barely carried. Ethan stopped. Adrian leaned back in his chair. "You lost $4.2 million. I did not lose it. You transferred it into 6 companies controlled by you. There were legitimate operating expenses. You moved $800,000 to a casino account in Atlantic City." Ethan's mouth opened. Adrian looked bored. That boredom frightened Mara more than anger. Ethan lifted the leather bag and placed it on the table. "I brought partial repayment." Adrian did not look at the bag. "How much?" "200,000. The silence sharpened. Ethan forced a smile. as a gesture of good faith. Adrian's gaze moved back to Mara. The room seemed to narrow around her. Ethan touched the small of her back and pushed her forward. Only half a step. It was enough. And he said, "I brought something more valuable than cash." Mara's stomach turned. Adrian's eyes remained on her. Ethan continued, "Mara can stay here until I settle the remaining balance. She is discreet, loyal. She understands how to make herself useful." One of the men near the wall shifted his jaw. Adrian did not move. "You are offering me a person, temporarily." Ethan's hand pressed harder against Mara's back. "She will not cause trouble." Mara felt the blood leave her face. The room was too cold. The lights above the table became painfully bright. Her lungs drew in a shallow breath, then refused the next. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Ethan did not notice. He was still talking. "She knows how to follow instructions." Mara tried to shift her weight from the bruised hip. Something moved beneath her left ribs. Pain ripped through her chest. Her vision flashed white. She reached for the nearest chair. Her fingers touched only air. Ethan caught her wrist. "Do not embarrass me," he whispered. The walls tilted. The city lights rolled sideways behind Adrian. Mara heard a chair scrape against the floor. Adrian was standing, her knees folded. The black floor rushed toward her face. She never felt the impact. A hand slid beneath the back of her skull, a breath before the marble could take her. Another caught her shoulder, stopping the rest of her body from twisting against the fractured ribs. For one suspended second, Mara hung between falling and being held. Then the room returned in broken pieces, the cold floor beneath her hip, the taste of blood at the back of her mouth, Ethan's voice sharp with panic. Adrian Cross kneeling beside her. His palm covered nearly the entire back of her head. The skin was rough, ridged with calluses, but his touch remained steady. He lowered her carefully until her cheek rested against the warmth of his hand instead of the marble. Mara tried to breathe. Nothing happened. Her lungs fluttered without filling. Adrian watched her chest. "Look at me." She could not. The lights above him bled into white circles. Mara. She had never heard him say her name. The sound of it cut through the ringing in her ears. Her eyes found his. "Breathe through your nose," he said, slowly. She tried. A thin thread of air entered her lungs. Pain wrapped around her side. She flinched. Adrian's thumb moved near her cheek, then stopped when her entire body tightened. He noticed that too. He seemed to notice everything. Behind him, Ethan took a step forward. "She does this," he said. "She gets dramatic when she wants attention." Adrian did not look away from Mara. The room became very still. Ethan tried to laugh. It came out thin. "Give me a second, I can get her up." His shoe scraped against the marble. Mara's muscles locked. She knew that sound. She knew how quickly concern became punishment once no one important was watching. Adrian turned his head. "Take another step toward her." His voice was quiet. Cole Ramsey pushed away from the wall. Adrian continued. "You will leave this building through the window." Ethan stopped. No one moved. Mara stared at Adrian's profile. There was no anger in his face, no strain, no performance, only certainty. Ethan lifted both hands. "You misunderstand. I understand perfectly." She fell. Adrian looked down at Mara again. His gaze moved over the dark mark beneath her jaw, the swelling near her collarbone, the split skin along the inside of her lip. "She fell," Adrian repeated. "Down the stairs, when yesterday." Mara closed her eyes. Ethan had always lied badly when frightened. His lies became louder, more detailed, more desperate. He seemed to believe that adding words could replace truth. Adrian's fingers shifted beneath her head. She has bruising at different stages of healing. Ethan said nothing. Some of it is older than yesterday. She is clumsy. Adrian's eyes lifted. The look he gave Ethan emptied the air from the room. Mara had seen disgust before. Ethan wore it whenever food was overcooked, whenever she cried, whenever a stranger failed to recognize his importance. Adrian's disgust was colder. It carried no pleasure. It was the expression of a man who had found rot beneath polished wood. Ethan glanced toward the glass doors. Cole remained beside them. Adrian returned his attention to Mara. "Can you move your fingers?" She flexed the hand nearest him. Pain moved through her wrist where Ethan had gripped her. "Yes, your feet." She moved her toes inside the narrow shoes. Yes. Do you know where you are, Cross Tower? What city? Philadelphia. His gaze held hers for another second. Then Mara tried to sit up. Adrian's hand pressed gently beneath her head. Do not, I can stand. No. The answer came without hesitation. Mara swallowed. I need to stand. You need to breathe. I am fine. His expression did not change. You collapsed. I lost my balance. You stopped breathing before you fell. She looked away. Adrian studied her face. Where does it hurt? Nowhere. Ethan found his voice. She said she is fine. Adrian turned toward him. You no longer have permission to speak. Ethan's mouth closed. Adrian looked back at Mara, where she remained silent. He moved one hand toward her left side. Mara recoiled before he touched her. The reaction was instant and humiliating. Adrian stopped with his hand suspended above her ribs. His jaw tightened. Left side, he said. It was not a question. Mara stared at the ceiling. One rib, more than one. She did not answer. Adrian lowered his hand. Then he slid one arm beneath her knees. Mara's breath caught. His other arm moved behind her back, supporting her above the injured ribs. He paused. Do not fight me. I can walk. You cannot sit. Before she could argue, he lifted her. The floor disappeared. Mara's good arm circled his neck by instinct. Adrian rose without effort. Her body settled against his chest, close enough that she could feel the steady beat of his heart beneath his shirt. He was warm. The warmth reached through the thin satin of her dress, through the cold sweat on her skin, through the fear that had lived in her bones for so long it felt permanent. Mara looked at his hands. One spanned the width of her back. The other supported her knees. Scarred hands. Hands that could break bone. Hands that had caught her twice. Ethan stared at them from across the room. Adrian turned toward him. The meeting is finished. Relief flashed across Ethan's face too quickly. Of course. I understand. We can reschedule after she settles down. No. Ethan's smile faltered. Adrian carried Mara toward the end of the table. The debt is closed. For one moment, Ethan appeared unable to understand. Then his shoulders dropped. His mouth opened in the breathless grin. I knew you would see reason. Adrian stopped. Mara felt the change in him before he spoke. Not tension, absence. The last trace of patience leaving the room. Ethan stepped closer to the table. She is worth more than the balance, you will see. She is quiet. She learns quickly. She can be very grateful when she understands what is expected. Mara closed her eyes. Adrian's arms tightened around her. Not painfully, protectively. You believe I accepted her as payment. Ethan looked between them. You said the debt was closed. It is, so we understand each other. No. Adrian's voice dropped. You still do not understand anything. Ethan's breathing quickened. Adrian looked toward Cole. Cole straightened. Mr. Crow will leave Philadelphia before midnight. Ethan nodded rapidly. Yes, absolutely. I can do that. He will not return to his apartment. I do not need anything there. He will not call anyone. Of course. He will not contact a bank attorney, police officer, or family member. Ethan's smile disappeared. Adrian continued. If I hear his voice after he walks out of this room, you will find him. Cole gave one small nod. Ethan looked at Mara. Something dark moved across his face. Resentment, not regret, not concern. He looked at her the way a gambler looked at a card that had failed to save him. Adrian saw it. So help me, he said, if you look at her that way again, you will not reach the elevator. Ethan lowered his gaze. Mara listened to his breathing. For 2 years she had measured every room by Ethan's mood. She knew the sound of his anger before it broke. She knew the silence that meant he was deciding where to hit. Now he stood 10 feet away, powerless to reach her. The realization should have felt like freedom. Instead, it felt unreal. Ethan swallowed. What about the money? Adrian's eyes became flat. You should have thought about the money before you walked into my building and offered me a woman who cannot breathe. I made a mistake. You made several. I can fix this. You cannot. Ethan looked toward Cole. Cole opened one of the glass doors. Rain streaked the city beyond the corridor windows. Ethan hesitated. Mara. She opened her eyes. He looked smaller than he had in the apartment. His suit no longer seemed expensive. His face no longer seemed handsome. Without control, there was almost nothing left of him. You know I did not mean for this to happen. Mara stared at him. There were hundreds of things she could have said. You broke my ribs, you emptied my account, you locked me inside, you brought me here. But words had always been wasted on Ethan. So she gave him the one thing he had spent 2 years trying to take. Nothing. Adrian turned his body slightly, blocking Ethan from her view. Remove him. Cole stepped forward. Ethan backed away. I am leaving. Then leave. I understand. He moved toward the doors. Cole followed. Ethan did not look back. The glass closed behind them. The conference room became silent again. Mara stared at the place where Ethan had been. Her body began to shake. Adrian looked down at her. Cold. She could not answer. He carried her toward a solid oak door at the rear of the room. One of the other men opened it. The office beyond smelled of old paper leather and dark liquor. Bookshelves covered the walls. Stacks of ledgers sat beside locked cabinets. A worn sofa faced a heavy desk. Adrian crossed the room and lowered her onto the leather cushions. The movement was careful, but pain still cut through her side. Mara curled around it. Adrian reached for the telephone. I do not need a doctor. He lifted the receiver. You passed out. I have not eaten. That explains one problem. He pressed 3 numbers. It does not explain the rest. Mara pushed herself upright. Her arm gave out. Adrian caught her shoulder before she fell sideways. She recoiled. His hand disappeared at once. He looked at the place he had touched, then at her face. Do not try that again. You cannot order me not to move. I just did. She glared at him. Something almost moved in his expression, not amusement, recognition. He spoke into the phone. Hale, my office. Bring the portable scanner. A pause. Now. He hung up. Mara pulled the torn edge of her dress over her knees. What happens when he's finished? The doctor. Yes, you rest. Here for tonight. And tomorrow Adrian walked to a cabinet and poured water into a glass. Tomorrow depends on what is broken. Mara watched him approach. His size filled the room differently now. In the conference room he had seemed part of the architecture. Here among old books and dim lamps he looked more human. That did not make him less dangerous. He held out the glass. Mara did not take it. Is Ethan alive? Adrian's hand remained still. You need water. Is he alive? The silence answered before he did. Mara stared at him. Adrian placed the glass on the table beside her. He left this floor alive. That is not what I asked. No. The word was blunt. Final. Mara's fingers tightened around the fabric covering her knees. She had known. She had understood the moment Cole followed Ethan into the corridor. Still hearing it aloud made the room tilt. She waited for grief. None came. Relief arrived first. Dark, shameful, enormous. She could breathe around it more easily than she could breathe around her ribs. Adrian watched her. You do not have to mourn him. I am not. You believe you should. Mara looked away. He was not always like that. Yes, he was. Her eyes returned to his. Adrian leaned one hand against the desk. Men like him do not become cruel when they gain power. Power only removes the need to hide it. Mara swallowed. You killed him because of me. No, do not lie to me. His gaze sharpened. I killed him because he stole from me, lied to me, and entered my building believing a human life could be transferred like property. You would have killed him without me. Yes. The honesty unsettled her. There was no attempt to appear righteous, no effort to turn violence into kindness. He did not need her forgiveness. Mara looked at the water. What happens to the collateral? There is no collateral. Ethan brought me here to pay you. Ethan was an idiot. You said the debt was closed. It is, because he is dead. Because I decided it was closed. Mara's voice turned bitter. And now you decide what happens to me. Adrian became very still. The words hung between them. She had expected anger. Instead, he pulled a chair away from the desk and sat across from her, leaving several feet of space. You are right. Mara blinked. You did not choose to enter this building? No. You did not choose the arrangement. No. You did not choose what happened to Ethan. Her throat tightened. No. Adrian rested his forearms on his knees. So I will make one decision for you. Mara's body tensed. You will receive medical treatment before you leave this room. That is not your decision. It is while you are unable to stand. I can stand. Adrian's gaze dropped briefly toward her trembling legs. You have said that 3 times. It remains true. Then prove it. Mara stared at him. He leaned back. Stand. The challenge entered the room softly. Mara placed both hands against the sofa. She pushed. Her arms shook. Pain tightened around her ribs, but she forced herself upward. For 1 second she stood, then her left leg folded. Adrian crossed the distance before she touched the floor. His hands caught her waist and shoulder, holding her upright without pressing the injured side. Mara's palms landed against his chest. His heartbeat remained steady beneath them. You proved my point, he said. She hated the calm in his voice. She hated the weakness in her knees. Most of all, she hated that his hands were the only reason she was standing. Let go. Adrian released her immediately. Her knees weakened again. He caught her again. This time he said nothing. Mara closed her eyes. Fine. He lowered her back to the sofa. Fine, what I will see the doctor. Good. A knock sounded at the office door. An older man entered carrying a worn leather medical bag. He wore wire-framed glasses and a dark wool coat spotted with rain. His eyes moved from Adrian to Mara. He did not ask why she was there. He placed the bag on the table. I am Dr. Hale. Mara nodded. I need to examine your ribs. Is that all right? The question surprised her. She looked at Adrian. He was already walking toward the window. He turned his back to the room. Mara looked at the doctor again. Yes. Hale pulled on a pair of gloves. The snap of rubber sounded loud in the quiet office. When Mara tried to move the strap of her dress, pain stopped her. Hale reached for a pair of medical scissors. I will need to cut the fabric. Her breath caught. No. The word came too quickly. Adrian turned his head slightly. Mara wrapped both arms around her chest. I said no. Hale lowered the scissors. All right. Adrian remained by the window. No one will touch you without permission, he said. Mara looked at his broad back. The words settled slowly. Hale waited. Mara stared at the black satin gathered around her knees. Ethan had chosen the dress because he thought it made her valuable. Now it was only fabric. She loosened her grip. Cut it. Adrian turned fully toward the window again. The scissors moved through satin. The sound was soft, final. The dress opened along one side, exposing the dark bruising across Mara's ribs and hip. Dr. Hale stopped breathing for a second. Adrian heard it. His hands closed at his sides. Hale examined her carefully, asking before every touch. He pressed along the ribs, checked her shoulder, tested her pupils, and ran a small scanner across her abdomen. Mara watched the ceiling. Adrian did not turn around once. Finally, Hale removed his gloves. 2 fractured ribs, severe tissue damage around the hip and shoulder, dehydration, mild malnutrition, no internal bleeding, no punctured lung. Adrian's voice came from the window. Can she walk? Not safely tonight. How long? Several weeks before the ribs stabilize. Longer before the bruising fully heals. Hale wrapped Mara's ribs and gave her medication with the water Adrian had placed beside her. The pressure around her chest hurt at first. Then the grinding beneath her skin eased. For the first time in days, a breath entered without cutting her open. Hale packed his bag. She needs food rest and observation. Adrian nodded. The doctor left. Silence returned. Mara sat on the sofa with the torn dress gathered around her waist. Adrian opened a lower drawer in his desk and removed a folded gray shirt. He placed it beside her without looking at her body. Put that on. Then he turned his back again. Mara pulled the shirt over her head. It smelled of cedar clean cotton and something unmistakably his. The fabric fell to the middle of her thighs. You can turn around, Adrian faced her. Mara held the ruined dress against her knees. You said I could leave after the doctor. I said you would receive treatment before leaving this room. That is not the same thing. No. She narrowed her eyes. So I am a prisoner. You are injured. That was not the question. Adrian studied her. No locked doors. Guards in the building. Watching me. Watching everyone. Mara looked toward the office door. And if I walk out, you will collapse before you reach the elevator. And if I do not, I will have a car take you wherever you choose. She searched his face for the trick. There was none she could see. Why Adrian moved toward her. He stopped before entering the distance that made her body tighten. Because Ethan brought you here as property. His gaze held hers. You will leave as a person. Mara looked down at her hands. They were still trembling. Adrian waited. After a long silence, she whispered, "I cannot walk. I know." The words held no victory, only fact. He stepped closer, then paused. "May I carry you?" Mara lifted her eyes. A man feared across Philadelphia stood before her, asking permission to touch what Ethan had treated as his possession. Her throat tightened. She nodded once. Adrian slid one arm behind her back and the other beneath her knees. His huge hands lifted her from the sofa with the same careful strength that had kept her face from striking the floor. Mara rested against his chest. The office door opened. Beyond it, the private elevator waited. Adrian carried her inside, and the doors closed on the room where Ethan's transaction had ended. The private elevator rose without a sound. Mara remained against Adrian's chest, one hand curled into the fabric near his shoulder. The medication had softened the sharpest edges of her pain, but every small vibration still moved through her ribs. She tried to hold herself rigid so he would not have to adjust his grip. Adrian noticed. "You can breathe." "I am breathing." Barely. His voice carried through his chest before it reached her ears. Mara loosened her body by a fraction. His arm shifted beneath her, supporting the change before she could lose balance. The elevator walls were dark steel rather than polished brass. No reflection stared back at her. No frightened woman in a black dress. No Ethan standing behind her. Only the low mechanical hum and Adrian's heartbeat. Steady, unhurried. The doors opened. Cold white light spread across polished concrete. Adrian stepped into a space that looked less like a home than the private floor of an expensive hotel. The living room stretched toward a wall of glass overlooking Philadelphia. Rain moved across the windows in silver threads. Far below, traffic flowed along Market Street, red lights and white lights sliding through the wet city. The furniture was dark and severe. Leather chairs, steel tables, a long gray sofa positioned toward the skyline. Nothing soft except a folded blanket resting over one arm. No photographs stood on the shelves. No paintings covered the walls. No shoes waited by the door. The apartment was immaculate, silent, and strangely empty. Mara looked toward the ceiling. "How many people live here?" "One." Her eyes moved back to him. "You, yes." She waited for more. None came. Adrian carried her down a wide hallway. His footsteps made almost no sound against the concrete. Closed doors passed on either side, each made of dark wood and fitted with heavy silver handles. At the end of the hall, he stopped before the final door. "This room is yours." Mara looked up at him. "For tonight." His jaw shifted. "For as long as you require it." He opened the door with his shoulder and carried her inside. The guest room was larger than the bedroom she had shared with Ethan. A wide bed stood against the far wall beneath a low leather headboard. Gray linen covered the mattress. A reading lamp cast warm light over a small table. Thick curtains concealed the window. The room smelled of clean cotton and dust that had not been disturbed in months. Adrian approached the bed. Mara tightened her hand around his shirt. He stopped. "What?" She looked at the mattress. Nothing. His gaze remained on her face. Mara released him. Adrian lowered her carefully, supporting her shoulders until her back rested against the pillows. The bed shifted beneath her weight. Pain pressed around her ribs but did not cut as deeply as before. He moved his hands away. The loss of warmth came too quickly. Mara pulled the gray shirt farther over her thighs. Adrian pointed toward a door on the left. "Bathroom." Another door stood near the closet. "That opens into the hall. It stays locked." Mara stared at it. Why is there another door? The room was designed for staff. "Do you have staff? They come during the day." The answer was brief, but it placed strangers somewhere beyond the silence. People moved through this home. They cleaned it, cooked in it. Perhaps waited for Adrian to leave before speaking above a whisper. Mara looked toward the bathroom. "I need to wash my face. You need to remain in bed. There is blood in my mouth." Adrian considered her. Then he walked to the bathroom and turned on the light. Black marble covered the walls. A glass shower occupied one corner. Clean towels were stacked inside an open cabinet. An unopened toothbrush rested beside the sink. Adrian returned to the bed. "You will leave the bathroom door unlocked." Mara's body tightened. "No. If you lose consciousness on the tile, I need access. I am not leaving a door unlocked while you are outside it." His eyes settled on her. "I will not enter unless you call. That is easy to say." "Yes." She waited for anger. His face remained still. Adrian reached into his pocket and placed a small black device on the bedside table. "What is that, an alarm? For what?" "You press it if you fall." Mara looked at the button. "And if I do not, I enter when the room becomes quiet for too long." Her throat tightened. "That sounds like a threat. It is a precaution. They often sound the same." For the first time, Adrian seemed uncertain how to answer. He looked toward the bathroom, then back at her. "You may close the door." Mara watched him. "Not lock it. No." She almost argued again. Then pain moved through her hip, reminding her how close she had come to falling while attempting to stand in his office. Mara placed both feet on the floor. Adrian moved forward. She lifted one hand. "Do not." He stopped. Mara pushed against the mattress. Her arms trembled. Her ribs tightened beneath the wrap. She stood slowly, waiting for the floor to steady. Adrian remained close enough to catch her. His hands stayed at his sides. Mara took one step, then another. Her left leg dragged slightly. She kept her weight on the right side, though, that caused the bruise near her hip to pulse. The distance to the bathroom was less than 10 feet. It felt like crossing a street during heavy traffic. When she reached the doorway, she gripped the frame and turned. Adrian stood beside the bed. He had not followed. "Close the door," he said. Mara did. She did not lock it. The bathroom mirror showed her everything the bedroom mirror had hidden. The gray shirt hung from one shoulder. Her face looked narrow and colorless beneath the harsh light. Makeup had separated near the bruise along her jaw. A thin line of dried blood marked the corner of her mouth. Mara turned on the faucet. Cold water moved over her fingers. She pressed a wet cloth to her face and watched beige makeup run into the white basin. The bruise beneath it emerged slowly. Purple near the center. Yellow along the edge. A dark mark curved beneath her ear where Ethan's thumb had pressed days earlier. She cleaned her mouth. When she rinsed the cloth, the water turned pink. Mara stared at it until it disappeared down the drain. She could hear nothing beyond the door. No pacing, no voice asking why she was taking so long, no fist striking wood. The silence should have been comforting. Instead, it pressed against her ears. She returned to the bedroom. Adrian stood exactly where she had left him. His gaze moved briefly over her clean face. Something changed in his eyes when he saw the bruise without makeup. He said nothing. Mara reached the bed and sat. The effort left her breathing hard. Adrian pulled the blanket from the foot of the mattress and placed it over her legs. He did not tuck it around her. He simply gave it weight. "There is water beside you. Hale left medication in the office. I will bring it when it is time." Mara looked toward the door. "You are leaving, yes." The answer came so easily that suspicion rose before relief. "Where? My office. On this floor, the other side of the apartment." Mara studied him. Adrian understood the question she had not asked. "No one will enter this room." "How do I know?" "Because I said so." Ethan had said similar things. "No one will bother you. No one will take care of you like I do. No one will believe you." Mara looked down at the blanket. Adrian's voice lowered. The door locks from inside. Her eyes returned to him. He crossed the room and tested the silver lock beneath the handle. Then he stepped into the hall, leaving the door open. "You may lock it after I leave." Mara stared at the lock. "And the second door, already locked from this side. What if I need something?" "Use the alarm. What if I press it by mistake? I will survive the inconvenience." A faint edge entered his voice. Not humor exactly, but close enough that Mara noticed. Adrian stepped farther into the hall. Sleep. The door began to close. "Adrian." He stopped. The name felt strange in her mouth, less dangerous than Cross, more dangerous in another way. His eyes met hers. "Why did you bring me here?" He looked past her toward the dark window. "Because you cannot walk. That is not the real answer. It is the only answer I have tonight." He closed the door. The lock waited beneath Mara's hand. She stared at it for a long time. Then she turned it. The sound was small, final. The room belonged to her for one night. That should have been enough. Sleep came in fragments. Mara drifted, woke, and drifted again. Each time she opened her eyes, the room took several seconds to become real. Gray walls, closed curtains, warm lamp, locked door. No Ethan. Pain lived beneath the medication like an animal under deep water. She could feel it moving, but it could not reach the surface. Near midnight, she woke to a soft sound. The door handle moved. Mara became rigid. Her heart struck hard against her ribs. The handle stopped. A knock followed. 3 quiet taps. "Mara," Adrian's voice. She did not answer. Another pause. "It is time for the medication." Mara looked at the clock. 4 hours had passed. The handle remained still. He was waiting. She forced herself upright and reached toward the lock. Pain moved around her side as she turned it. The door opened only after she released the handle. Adrian stood in the hallway carrying a glass of water and 2 pills. He had removed his white shirt. A black cotton shirt stretched across his chest and shoulders. Dark ink covered part of his left arm, disappearing beneath the sleeve. Without the formal clothes, he looked larger, less distant. He entered only far enough to reach the bedside table. The pills clicked against the wood. Mara watched his hands. "You could have brought a nurse. I could have, but you did not." "No." Why? Adrian looked at her. "Because Hale gave the instructions to me. That does not make you responsible. I decide what makes me responsible." Mara looked at the pills. "What are they?" "One is for inflammation, the other is for pain. Will they make me sleep?" "Probably." That was not an answer. It was the answer Hale gave me. Mara lifted the pills. Her hand shook. Adrian noticed but did not offer to help. She placed them on her tongue and drank. The water was cold enough to hurt her teeth. Adrian picked up the empty glass. Mara's gaze moved toward the door. "You can close it." He paused. "Do you want it locked?" The question settled between them. Mara looked at the thin strip of light in the hallway. No. Adrian left the door open several inches. He stepped outside. "Adrian." He turned. "Thank you for asking." His expression did not soften, but his voice did. "Sleep." The medication pulled her under before she heard his footsteps disappear. Morning arrived through the smell of coffee and hot iron. Mara woke slowly. For several seconds she did not know where she was. Then she saw the open door. Hallway light had become daylight. No one had entered. The alarm remained untouched beside the bed. She pushed the blanket away. Standing required patience. Her body felt heavy, but the sharp pain had faded into a deep pressure. She moved one leg over the side of the mattress, then the other. Her feet touched the cold floor. Mara remained seated until the room stopped moving. The shirt Adrian had given her reached halfway down her thighs. She found a folded pair of gray sweatpants on the chair near the door. They had not been there the night before. A small piece of paper rested on top. "From the housekeeper, not from me." Mara read the sentence twice. The handwriting was heavy and uneven. She dressed slowly. The waistband hung loose on her hips, but it was better than walking through the apartment with bare legs. The smell of food led her down the hall. The penthouse looked different in daylight. Rain had stopped. Philadelphia spread beyond the windows beneath a pale sky. The buildings along the river caught strips of weak sunlight. Mara followed the sound of metal scraping against iron. The kitchen occupied one side of the living space. Black stone counters surrounded a wide cooking surface. Steel appliances reflected the windows. Adrian stood at the stove. He wore dark pants and the same black shirt. One hand held a metal spatula. The other rested against the counter beside a mug of coffee. A thick steak hissed inside a cast-iron pan. Mara stopped in the doorway. Adrian did not turn. "Sit." She looked around. "Good morning to you, too." His head shifted slightly. "Good morning. Sit." Mara approached the counter. A high stool waited near the island. She placed one hand on the seat and attempted to climb. Her ribs objected. Adrian moved around the counter. "I can do it. I can see that." He placed one hand near her elbow without touching. Mara pulled herself onto the stool. Adrian returned to the stove. "You cook, yes. You have people for that. Yes. Then why are you doing it? Because they are not here." The simple answer ended the question. He transferred the steak to a white plate, then added 2 eggs and a handful of spinach. The plate slid across the counter and stopped before Mara. She stared at it. "I cannot eat all of this. You can try. I do not eat steak for breakfast. You do today." Mara picked up the fork. The smell made her stomach tighten painfully. She had not understood how hungry she was until food sat within reach. The first bite tasted of salt, fat, and black pepper. Her body reacted before her pride could interfere. She took another bite, then another. She stopped cutting the pieces properly. Her fork scraped against the plate. The food disappeared too quickly. "Slow down." Adrian's voice made her freeze. The fork remained halfway to her mouth. He stood across from her with his coffee. His eyes were fixed on the plate. "You are eating like someone is about to remove it." Heat moved through Mara's face. She lowered the fork. "Sorry." Adrian placed his mug on the counter. "Do not apologize." She looked at him. "For what? For being hungry?" Mara's fingers tightened around the fork. Adrian leaned one hand against the stone. "No one is taking the plate." The words entered a place in her that she had kept locked longer than the bedroom door. She looked down. "I know. No, you do not." There was no cruelty in it, only observation. Mara cut another piece of steak. This time she chewed slowly. Adrian picked up his coffee. The silence returned. It did not feel empty. When she finished half the plate, she pushed it away. Adrian looked at the remaining food. "That is enough." Mara waited for him to argue. He did not. Instead, he placed a bottle of water beside her. "Hale will return tomorrow. I do not need him to. He disagrees." Mara opened the bottle. "What happens until then? You rest. That cannot be the entire plan. It is. I am not good at doing nothing." Adrian looked at her over the rim of his mug. "I noticed." Mara glanced toward the living room. "Am I allowed to leave the bedroom?" "Yes." "Am I allowed to use the kitchen?" "Yes." "The library, yes. What am I not allowed to do?" "Use the stairs alone. Enter the Eastern office during meetings. Leave the building without telling me. Ignore medication. Refuse food for more than one meal." Mara set the bottle down. "That sounds like a prison. A prison would not require you to tell me before leaving. It would stop me. I will not." His answer came immediately. Mara held his gaze. "And my room. No one enters without knocking. Does that include you? Especially me?" The certainty in his voice closed around the question. Mara looked away first. The following days formed a strange rhythm. Food appeared at regular hours. Medication waited beside water. Dr. Hale returned, examined the bruising, and confirmed that the swelling had begun to ease. Mara spent mornings in the library. It was the only room in the penthouse that felt lived in. Books covered every wall. Some were arranged carefully. Others leaned in uneven stacks beside a worn leather chair. She read because reading required nothing from her body. At first, Adrian remained elsewhere. She heard doors open and close. Low voices crossed the hall. Men arrived in dark coats and left without looking toward the library. No one entered her room. No one asked why she was there. At night, Mara locked the door. Adrian knocked every 4 hours. He waited every time. On the 4th night, the dream returned. Ethan stood inside the apartment bedroom holding the black dress. He told her she had embarrassed him. Mara tried to leave, but the door had no handle. His footsteps moved closer. She woke on the floor. A broken water glass lay near her hand. The lamp had fallen. Pain tore through her side as she dragged herself toward the wall. The bedroom door opened. Adrian appeared in the hallway. Mara grabbed a shard of glass. He stopped immediately. "Mara!" She pressed her back against the wall. Her breath came in broken sounds. Adrian lowered himself to the floor outside the doorway. He kept both hands visible. "You're in Cross Tower." Mara stared at him. "He is here." "No, I heard him. You heard the glass break." Her hand shook. Adrian remained where he was. "Ethan is dead." The words cut through the dream. "He cannot enter this room." Mara looked at the shard in her hand. A thin line of blood crossed her palm. "Put it down." She could not move. Adrian's voice lowered. "You are not trapped." Mara stared at the open door behind him. Slowly her fingers loosened. The glass fell. Adrian did not approach. "Can I come closer?" Mara nodded. He crossed the room on his knees, moving slowly enough that she could watch every shift of his body. His hand reached toward hers. He stopped before touching it. Mara placed her injured palm in his. Adrian wrapped it with a clean cloth. His fingers nearly closed around her wrist, but the pressure remained light. When he finished, he helped her into bed. Then he turned toward the door. Mara caught the edge of his sleeve. Adrian stopped. She did not know what she was asking for. She only knew she could not watch the doorway alone. He understood. Without speaking, Adrian moved to the chair beside the window and sat. Mara lay back against the pillows. His presence filled the room, not like a lock, like weight placed against a door during a storm. When sleep returned, she allowed it. Morning light found Adrian still in the chair, head lowered, arms crossed over his chest. Mara watched him breathe. For the first time since entering Cross Tower, she did not measure the distance to the nearest exit. She measured the distance between the bed and the man who had stayed. Morning light found Adrian still in the chair, head lowered, arms crossed over his chest. Mara watched him breathe. In sleep, the hard lines of his face had loosened. The man who could silence a room with one word looked almost ordinary beneath the pale light. His shoulders remained too broad for the chair. One hand rested near his knee palm open. The clean cloth he had wrapped around hers still caught between two fingers. Mara looked at her bandaged palm. The cut was shallow. The memory beneath it was not. She shifted against the pillows. Adrian's eyes opened immediately. There was no confusion in them. One moment he was asleep, the next he was alert, gaze moving from the door to the window to Mara's face. "You should not sleep sitting up," she said. He straightened. "You should not break glasses in the dark. I did not plan it. Neither did I." His voice was rough from sleep. Mara expected him to leave. Instead, he stood and crossed to the bedside table. He checked the water glass, then the clock, then the medication. "You missed the 4 o'clock dose." "I was asleep. So was I." A trace of accusation entered his voice, directed entirely at himself. Mara watched him place 2 pills beside the glass. "You stayed." "Yes. You did not have to." Adrian looked at her. "I know." The answer remained in the room after he left. Recovery came through small humiliations before it came through victories. At first, Mara could not walk the full length of the hallway without stopping. She hated the way her hand reached for the wall before she consciously decided to use it. She hated the quiet attention Adrian gave the movement whenever he was nearby. He never offered help immediately. He waited. If she made it, he said nothing. If she faltered, his hand appeared near her elbow without closing around it. 3 days after the nightmare, Mara walked from the bedroom to the library without touching the wall. Adrian stood near the far window, speaking quietly into his phone. His eyes followed her the entire way. When she reached the leather chair, she lowered herself into it with more control than grace. Adrian ended the call. "You made it." Mara opened the book waiting on the table. "Made what? The hallway?" She looked up. "Were you watching me? I watch everything in this building." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." Something almost like a smile touched her mouth. Adrian noticed. His expression changed so slightly that another person might have missed it. His gaze softened, then hardened again as if softness required correction. Mara looked back at the book. She had chosen a collection of old crime reports from the 1920s. Most of the pages smelled of dust and dry leather. Adrian's library held history, financial law, architecture, military biographies, shipping records, and several shelves of novels with cracked spines. She had expected books about power. She had not expected poetry. The volume she found on the lower shelf had Adrian's name written inside the cover in a younger, less controlled hand. She was reading one of the marked pages when he noticed the book. His eyes moved to it and stopped. Mara lifted a brow. "You read poetry?" "No, your name is inside. I own many things I do not use. You underlined half the page." Adrian crossed the room and took the book from her hands. His fingers closed carefully around the spine. That was a long time ago. How long he returned the book to the shelf? Long enough. Mara watched him walk away. It was the first piece of him she had found that he had not chosen to show her. She remembered the marked line even after the book disappeared. It described a locked house with every window open. 2 days later, 3 shopping bags appeared outside her bedroom. Mara found them after breakfast. No note, no explanation. She carried them inside one at a time and placed them on the bed. The first contained jeans in 3 sizes, all soft from repeated washing. The second held plain cotton shirts, 2 wool sweaters, underclothes still folded in tissue paper, and a pair of dark boots with flat soles. The third contained a heavy winter coat. Nothing was tight, nothing glittered, nothing looked selected for another person's pleasure. Mara stood beside the bed with one hand resting on the coat. Adrian was in the kitchen when she found him. He sat at the island with a folder open beside his coffee. Reading glasses rested low on his nose. His sleeves were rolled above his wrists. Mara placed one of the shopping bags on the counter. "What is this?" He did not look up. "Clothing. I can see that." "Then why did you ask?" She waited. Adrian turned one page. Mara placed her palm flat on the folder. His eyes rose slowly. "What do I owe you? Nothing." "I do not accept gifts with invisible conditions." His gaze sharpened. "There are no conditions. There are always conditions, not in my home." Mara laughed once without humor. "You have rules for when I eat, when I take medicine, where I walk, and which doors I can enter. Those are not conditions attached to clothing. They are still rules." Adrian removed his glasses. "If the clothes offend you, do not wear them. That is not the point. Then tell me the point." Mara looked down at the bag. The simple clothes felt more intimate than the black dress Ethan had bought. Ethan had used clothing to shape her into whatever he needed others to see. Adrian had chosen things that asked nothing of her body. That frightened her in a different way. "I need to know what you expect." Adrian leaned back. "I expect you not to freeze. That is all. That is all." She studied his face. He appeared irritated, but not because she had challenged him. He seemed irritated that she believed kindness required a hidden invoice. Mara lifted the bag. "I will pay you back." "No, I will." Adrian picked up his coffee, then considered the clothes equipment. For what existing through a Philadelphia winter? Mara stared at him. He drank. The conversation ended because Adrian had decided it had. She wore the jeans that afternoon. They were slightly loose around the waist and soft against the bruise on her hip. When she entered the library, Adrian looked up from a stack of reports. His gaze moved over the clothes once, then returned to the page. He did not tell her she looked beautiful. He did not tell her the jeans belonged to him because he had paid for them. He did not look at her as if she had become something he owned. Mara sat across from him and began reading. The silence between them felt easier than it had the day before. By the second week, Dr. Hale allowed her to remove the rib wrap for short periods. Breathing still hurt when she moved too quickly, but the pain had changed. It no longer felt like broken glass beneath her skin. It had become a deep ache, steady enough to ignore for minutes at a time. Mara began taking longer walks through the penthouse. She learned its shape. The western hallway led to the guest rooms and library. The central space held the kitchen and living room. The eastern corridor contained Adrian's private office, a meeting room, and a steel door that remained locked. Men arrived there at all hours. They spoke in low voices. Mara recognized Cole by the silence that seemed to move with him. Other men were louder, though none raised their voices when Adrian entered. One afternoon, the office door remained open after a meeting. Folders covered the long table. Coffee cups sat beside legal pads filled with numbers. A young man in a gray suit gathered papers into uneven stacks while Adrian spoke with Cole near the window. Mara intended to pass. Then she saw the invoice. The name printed at the top was Keystone Aggregate Supply. She stopped. The vendor number ended in 4817. Mara had seen the same number on a different invoice left near the library 2 days earlier. That one belonged to Delaware Masonry Group. She stepped into the room. The young man looked up. "You cannot be in here." Mara ignored him. She picked up the invoice. Adrian's voice came from across the room. "Mara." She turned. His expression revealed nothing, but Cole's eyes moved toward the document in her hand. Mara held it up. "These companies are using the same vendor identification." The young man reached for the paper. "That is not possible." Mara moved it out of reach. "It is printed at the top." Adrian crossed the room. "What companies? Keystone Aggregate and Delaware Masonry." He took the invoice. His fingers brushed hers. Mara stepped back before the contact could become noticeable. Adrian examined the number. The young man laughed nervously. "It is a clerical error." Mara looked at him. Both companies also use post office boxes in the same branch. The laughter stopped. Adrian lifted his eyes. "How do you know that I saw the other invoice?" "We're in the library. It should not have been there. No, it should not." His tone hardened. "You read it. It was open. That was not permission." Mara felt the old instinct rise. "Lower your eyes. Apologize. Make yourself smaller before the room becomes dangerous. She held Adrian's gaze instead. You do not get to decide I am intelligent only when it is convenient. The young man beside her stopped breathing. Cole looked toward the window, though Mara suspected he was hiding a reaction. Adrian stood close enough that she could see the faint scar cutting through his eyebrow. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then he placed the invoice on the table. What else did you notice? Mara blinked. The concrete charges are too regular. Explain. Construction does not move in perfect weekly quantities. Weather changes, deliveries change, work stops. These invoices repeat the same amounts every Thursday. Adrian looked at the young man. Who approves them? The man swallowed. Daniel Mercer. Cole moved toward the door. Adrian stopped him with one glance. Not yet. He returned his attention to Mara. How far back? I only saw 2 invoices. Adrian gathered the folders and pushed them toward her. Look. Mara stared at the stack. You are giving me access. I am asking you to examine them. Asking. The word mattered. She pulled out a chair. For the next 3 hours, Mara followed the numbers. The false supplier had been moving money from Adrian's construction companies for 8 months. Invoices were duplicated across 3 projects. Delivery records used identical truck numbers on different sides of the city within the same hour. The total theft exceeded $600,000. Mara wrote the final figure at the bottom of a legal pad. Adrian stood behind her chair. His presence felt heavy, but he did not lean over her shoulder. You are certain? Yes. The young man in the gray suit looked ill. Adrian closed the folder. Cole. Cole opened the door. Bring Mercer to the lower office. The young man stepped back. Adrian's gaze shifted to him. You will go home. Mr. Cross, I did not know. I believe you. Relief crossed the man's face. Adrian continued. If you mention this conversation before tomorrow morning, I will stop believing you. The man left quickly. Mara remained seated. She did not ask what would happen in the lower office. She already knew enough about Adrian's world to understand that the accounting investigation would end where normal business procedures did not. Adrian placed a secure laptop on the table. Would you examine the remaining vendor files? Mara looked at the machine. For how long? As long as you choose. And if I say no, then you say no. She studied him. Will you pay me? Yes. I am staying in your house. That is unrelated. How much? Adrian named a weekly amount higher than she had earned before Ethan made her leave her job. Mara almost refused it on principle. Then she stopped. Refusing money because a man offered it was not independence. Choosing the terms was. I want a separate account. You will have one. In my name. Yes. You do not control it. Adrian's jaw shifted. No. Mara closed the laptop. Then I will look. The work gave shape to her days. Numbers behaved differently from people. They could be hidden, altered, or arranged to deceive, but they always left evidence. Every false total required another figure to be wrong. Every missing payment created an empty space somewhere else. Mara understood empty spaces. She began working in the library after breakfast. Adrian sometimes joined her. He reviewed reports at the opposite table, reading through his glasses while sunlight moved across the floor. They spoke rarely. When they did, the conversation stayed practical. A question about an invoice, a supplier name, a payment date. Still, Mara began to recognize his rhythms. He drank coffee until noon and water after. He read every page before signing the first. He tapped his thumb once against the table when irritated twice when deciding whether someone had lied. He never sat with his back to a door. Adrian learned her rhythms too. He knew she read the final page of novels before beginning the first. He knew she disliked cinnamon. He knew she removed tomatoes from every sandwich but ate tomato soup without complaint. He knew she stopped working when men raised their voices in the Eastern office even if she pretended not to hear. Neither acknowledged how much they had begun to notice. The problem came with the first medical appointment outside Cross Tower. Dr. Hale wanted new imaging at his private clinic. Mara dressed in jeans, a dark sweater, and the winter coat Adrian had given her. She entered the elevator alone and found Cole waiting in the garage beside a black sedan. Another man sat behind the wheel. Mara stopped. Where is Adrian in a meeting? Cole opened the rear door. Mara looked toward the second vehicle parked behind them. A man stood beside it watching the garage entrance. Who is he? Security. For Adrian, for you. Mara turned toward Cole. I do not need security. Mr. Cross disagrees. The words closed around her chest. Not pain. Something older. Something that remembered Ethan taking her phone because he had decided she was unsafe with it. Mara stepped away from the car. I am not going. Cole's expression remained neutral. The appointment is in 20 minutes. Cancel it. He will not like that. He should have asked me. Mara returned to the elevator. Cole did not stop her. Adrian found her in the library 30 minutes later. The door opened with enough force to strike the wall. Mara looked up from the laptop. Adrian entered. Why did you cancel? Why did you put an armed man outside my door? He was in the garage. He was assigned to follow me. Yes, you did not ask. I did not need to. Mara closed the laptop. The movement was careful. So that is how this works. Adrian stopped near the table. How what works? You call me a guest until you decide something important. This is not about permission. It is exactly about permission. You are connected to Ethan's death. I did not kill him. His former associates do not care. Then explain that to me before assigning someone to watch every step I take. Adrian's jaw tightened. He was there to protect you. Ethan's voice moved through her memory. I am protecting you. I am helping you. You cannot trust yourself when I am not there. Mara stood. You sound like him. The room became silent. Adrian's face emptied. Mara saw the wound before he hit it. I am not Ethan. Then stop making decisions the way he did. He stepped toward her. The speed of the movement made her body react before her mind did. Mara moved back. Her shoulder struck the bookshelf. Adrian stopped instantly. His hands closed into fists. Then slowly, deliberately, he opened them. The anger remained in his face, but he held it away from her as if it were a weapon pointed in the wrong direction. What would make you feel protected, he asked, without making you feel watched? Mara had prepared for an argument. She had not prepared for a question. Her breath left slowly. The driver can take me. No guard, not beside me. Adrian looked toward the window. One man remains in the clinic lobby. Why? Because I cannot protect you from this building. I did not ask you to. No. His gaze returned to her. But I am asking you to accept that condition. Mara considered it. Only in the lobby. Yes. He does not follow me into the examination room. No. He does not report every conversation I have. Adrian's mouth tightened. No. And you tell me before security changes. A longer pause. Yes. Mara nodded. The agreement felt small. It also felt enormous. Adrian turned toward the door. Your appointment has been moved to 2. Adrian. He stopped. I should not have compared you to Ethan. His back remained toward her. You were right to. No, I made the decision because I believed I knew what was best. He looked over his shoulder. That is how it begins. Then he left. The words followed Mara through the rest of the day. That night, Adrian returned after midnight. Mara heard the private elevator open. Men's voices crossed the living room. One sounded strained. Another spoke too quietly to understand. A door closed. Silence returned. Mara walked into the kitchen and found Adrian at the sink. Blood stained the cuff of his white shirt. He had rolled the sleeve above his elbow. Water moved over his hands, turning pink before disappearing into the drain. Mara stopped near the island. Is that yours? No. She looked at his right hand. One knuckle was split, that is. Adrian turned off the water. It is nothing. Mara opened the cabinet where Dr. Hale kept medical supplies. Adrian watched her remove antiseptic and gauze. You do not need to do that. I know. She placed the supplies on the counter. Adrian did not offer his hand. Mara waited. After several seconds, he extended it. His palm covered most of the black stone counter. Scars crossed the knuckles and disappeared beneath his wrist. Some were thin and white. Others were thick enough to change the shape of the skin. Mara cleaned the fresh cut. Adrian did not flinch. You have done this before, he said. Cleaned a cut, stayed calm around blood. My father worked construction. Someone was always slicing a hand open. You never speak about your family. You never ask. Adrian looked at her. Would you answer? Maybe. She wrapped gauze around his knuckle. His hand remained still beneath hers. Why do men like Ethan bother you so much, she asked. Adrian's gaze moved toward the dark windows. They bother everyone, not like they bother you. His hand started to withdraw. Mara released it immediately. Adrian looked down at the bandage. My mother lived with a man who used his hands when words stopped working. Mara waited. I was 14. His voice had changed. The controlled authority was gone, leaving something heavier. He was not large. He did not need to be. Fear made him large enough. Adrian leaned against the counter. One night he put her in the hospital. I waited for him to come home. Mara looked at the scars across Adrian's hands. What did you do? There was a fireplace poker beside the door. He said nothing else. He did not need to. Mara's throat tightened. Did she leave him? Yes. Was she safe for a while? The answer carried an ending Mara did not ask him to explain. Adrian looked at his hands. She told me I saved her by becoming the thing she feared. Were you his eyes met hers? Eventually. The honesty should have made Mara step back. Instead, she looked at the bandage around his knuckle. You stopped at the bedroom door. Adrian said nothing. You asked before coming closer. That does not erase anything else. No. Mara lifted her eyes. But it matters. The space between them changed. Adrian's gaze dropped to her mouth. Mara felt it, not as ownership, as restraint. She moved closer before fear could argue. Her fingers touched his wrist. Adrian became completely still. Mara rose slightly onto her toes. His breath changed. For one suspended second, his face lowered toward hers. Then he stepped back. The distance felt abrupt and cold. Mara stared at him. You do not want me. Adrian's expression hardened. That is not the problem. What is? You are still healing. My ribs barely hurt. I was not talking about your ribs. The words landed more gently than any touch could have. Mara lowered her hand. Adrian left the kitchen without looking back. Dr. Hale returned the following Tuesday. He examined Mara's ribs, checked the movement of her shoulder, and asked her to take several deep breaths. The pain remained, but it no longer stole her vision. Hale removed the final strip of tape. The bone has stabilized. Mara touched the skin beneath her sweater. So I am healed. You are healing. There is a difference. Adrian stood near the bedroom door. His face had returned to the unreadable stillness he wore during meetings. Hale packed his bag. You may resume normal movement. No lifting anything heavy for another month. Call if the pain becomes sharp again. Mara nodded. Dr. Hale left. The front door closed. Silence entered the room. Adrian checked his watch. The train leaves at 5. Mara looked at him. What train? He walked to the dresser and removed a thick white envelope from inside his jacket. He placed it on the dark wood. There are $15,000 inside. A phone, your identification, a ticket to Boston. The apartment address is saved in the phone. Mara stared at the envelope. The room felt suddenly colder. Adrian continued in the same voice he used when reviewing contracts. The apartment is paid for through the end of February. A position is available at an accounting firm near the Common. You are not required to accept it. You arranged a job. I arranged an introduction. You arranged an apartment. For 3 months. Mara looked at his face. He did not look back. The car leaves at 3:30. You are sending me away. Adrian's jaw tightened. You are healed. That is not what Hale said. You can walk out of this building without collapsing. The words struck harder than they should have. Mara looked at the clothes in the closet, the books beside the bed, the glass of water he still placed on the table every night. The arrangement is finished, Adrian said. Mara picked up the envelope. It felt heavy in her hand. Money, a phone, a new name on a lease. Every piece of freedom she had once believed impossible. She looked at the man who had placed it there. The envelope should have felt like an open door. Instead, it felt like Adrian had already closed one behind her. The envelope should have felt like an open door. Instead, it felt like Adrian had already closed one behind her. Mara stood beside the dresser holding $15,000 a train ticket and the pieces of a life arranged by a man who refused to look at her. Adrian remained near the bedroom door. His dark suit fit him with the same severe precision as the first night she had seen him at the conference table. His face had become unreadable again. The man who had slept in a chair beside her bed cooked breakfast while she could barely stand, and opened his hand beneath hers in the kitchen had disappeared behind the calm expression Philadelphia feared. The car leaves at 3:30, he said. Mara looked at the clock. It was not yet noon. You packed my things. No. Why not? They are your things. The answer should have comforted her. It did not. She placed the envelope on the dresser. You planned everything else. I created an exit. You created a new apartment, a job, a train ticket, and a phone. Yes. Without speaking to me. Adrian's jaw shifted. You needed options. This is not an option. It is a complete life. You are free to refuse the job, but not the departure. His eyes met hers. I told you how this would end. Mara remembered his office, the torn black dress, the tight bandage around her ribs, his gray shirt hanging past her thighs. You will remain here until you can leave without collapsing. At the time, she had believed the promise was proof that she was not a prisoner. Now, it sounded like a deadline. You told me when I could barely breathe. You understood me. I understood that Ethan was dead and that I had nowhere else to go. Adrian remained still. Mara stepped closer. You fed me, yes. You sat outside my room. You were injured. You gave me work. You found the theft. You changed your security because I asked. You were right to ask. Each response was controlled, careful, and empty of everything she needed him to say. Mara's voice rose. You taught me that footsteps in the hallway did not have to mean someone was coming to hurt me. Something moved behind Adrian's eyes. She continued before he could hide it. And now you want to put me on a train because asking me to leave is easier than asking me to stay. Adrian's expression hardened. I am not asking you to leave. The ticket says otherwise. I am giving you the chance to build a life outside this building. What if I do not want that life? You do not know what you want. The words entered the room like a slap. Mara became very still. Adrian seemed to hear them after they were spoken. His hand tightened once at his side. Mara looked at him. That sounded familiar. His eyes closed for half a second. When they opened, the coldness had disappeared. I know. No, you do not. I do. You think you know what is best for me because you have money men and locked doors. Adrian stepped into the room. Mara did not retreat. You were brought here, bruised, starving, and unable to stand, he said. You had no money, no identification, and no one you trusted enough to call. I know how I arrived. You were dependent on me for everything. I did not choose that. Exactly. His voice dropped. That is why you cannot make this choice while you are still inside my home. Mara stared at him. What choice to stay? The word seemed to change the air. Adrian looked toward the window rather than at her. Mara's heartbeat moved faster. You think I want to stay. I think you feel safe here. I do. You think safety is the same as love. Her throat tightened. And what do you think Adrian said? Nothing. Mara crossed the space between them. I do not know whether I love you. The confession hurt more than certainty would have. I do not know if this is love or gratitude or the first quiet place I have ever been given. I do not know if I want you or if I want the way fear disappears when you enter a room. Adrian looked at her then. His face revealed nothing but his breathing had changed. Mara forced herself to continue. I know I wait for your footsteps. I know I look for you when I wake. I know the apartment feels empty when you leave. Adrian's gaze lowered to her mouth. That is not enough. It is honest. It is still not enough. Anger burned through her. Then tell me what is. Adrian moved closer. The distance between them narrowed to inches. He smelled of cedar and winter air. I know when you wake during the night, he said quietly. The floor outside your room creaks twice when you walk toward the kitchen. Mara stopped breathing. I know you read the final page of every novel first because you do not trust endings. I know you hate cinnamon, but drink the coffee when the housekeeper adds it because you do not want to seem ungrateful. His voice became rougher. I know you leave every door open 3 inches. I know you count the men who enter the Eastern office. I know you touch the scar beneath your jaw when you are angry and pretend you are tired when you are afraid. Mara could feel the heat of him without contact. Adrian looked down at his hands. I know exactly how dangerous it is that I notice these things. Dangerous to whom? To me. The words were barely above a whisper. Mara's anger gave way to something deeper. Adrian lifted one hand toward her face. He stopped before touching her. His fingers remained suspended near her cheek. "You walk into a room," he said, "and I measure the distance between you and every exit. I hear a voice rise and look for your reaction before I look at the man speaking. I have spent my life making sure no one could be used against me." His hand lowered. "And then Ethan carried you into my conference room." Mara stared at him. "You think sending me away will fix that? No." "Then why? Because if you stay, my enemies will learn your name." Adrian stepped back, forcing distance between them. "They will learn where you sleep. They will learn what car you use and which streets you prefer. Police will ask you questions. Men who cannot reach me will reach for you. I already know you are dangerous. You know a fraction. Then tell me the rest." His expression became colder. "I have ordered men killed. I know. I have destroyed families to protect my own." Mara swallowed but held his gaze. "I know enough to believe you. You should not. Do not decide that for me." Adrian looked away. Outside the window, Philadelphia moved beneath a clear winter sky. People crossed intersections. Trains moved along elevated tracks. Thousands of lives continued without knowing what happened in the upper floors of Cross Tower. Mara touched the envelope on the dresser. "If I take the train, will you contact me?" "No." The answer came too quickly. "Will you watch me know? Will Cole know? Will you know where I am?" "Yes." A humorless breath escaped her. "Of course." Adrian faced her. "The apartment and job are legitimate. No one will follow you. No one will report your movements. And if I call, his eyes held hers. I will answer. How quickly? Before it rings twice." Mara looked down at the ticket. Boston, a city she had visited once as a child. Cold streets, brick buildings, and a harbor she barely remembered. What happens after 3 months? "The apartment becomes your responsibility. You have thought of everything." "No." His gaze moved over her face. "I did not plan for you." The truth in the sentence silenced her. Adrian picked up the envelope and placed it in her hands. "Take the train." Mara's fingers closed around it. "Why are you making me leave if you want me here? Because I want you here." She looked up. Adrian's voice remained quiet. "You need to wake somewhere that does not belong to me. Choose your own meals. Walk down a street without one of my men behind you. Earn money I did not place in your account." He touched the edge of the envelope. "You need to know whether you can live without me. And if I can," his jaw tightened, "then you should." The pain in his face lasted only a second. Mara saw it. "And if I still want to come back," Adrian stepped away. "The phone has one number saved." The train left Philadelphia at 5. Mara sat beside the window with her suitcase beneath her knees. Cross Tower disappeared behind warehouses, bridges, and rows of dark brick houses. The city widened, then thinned into winter fields. She did not cry. She watched until the skyline vanished. The apartment in Boston was on the 3rd floor of a narrow building near Beacon Hill. It contained a small bedroom, a kitchen with blue cabinets, and a living room that faced an alley. The floors creaked. The radiator hissed through the night. The lock was ordinary enough that Mara checked it 6 times before sleeping. No one knocked every 4 hours. No pills waited beside water. No low voice reminded her to eat. The silence felt different from the penthouse. It did not protect her. It simply waited. On the 3rd morning, Mara bought her own groceries. She stood in a crowded market holding a basket and realized no one would question what she chose. She bought coffee without cinnamon bread tomatoes she had no intention of eating, and a steak she did not know how to cook. She burned it. She ate it anyway. The accounting firm offered her a position after a 20-minute interview. Mara accepted. Her first paycheck entered an account only she controlled. She stared at the number for several minutes. It was smaller than what Adrian had paid her. It felt larger. Weeks passed. Mara learned the train routes. She found a bookstore near the river. She began leaving doors fully closed. She met a therapist whose office smelled of lavender and old carpet. During the first session, Mara said almost nothing. During the 5th, she said Ethan's name. During the 8th, she described the conference room. She did not describe Adrian as a savior. She described him as a dangerous man who had offered her something Ethan never had, a choice. By the end of the 3rd month, Mara had signed a lease for another apartment using her own income. She returned Adrian's $15,000 through a bank transfer. The money returned the next morning. A message appeared on the prepaid phone. It was not payment. It was restitution. Mara read the sentence twice. She sent the money again. It returned again. She did not call. The number remained saved beneath one name, Adrian. On the final Friday of February, Mara left work early. Snow had begun to fall over Boston. She returned to her apartment, packed one suitcase, and placed her keys on the kitchen counter. Then she picked them up again. The apartment was still hers for another month. She did not have to surrender one life to choose another. That mattered. The train reached Philadelphia after 11. Cross Tower rose above the wet streets, its upper windows dark. Mara entered through the main lobby wearing a wool coat and carrying her suitcase. The guard behind the desk looked at her once, then toward the elevator. Cole stepped out of the shadows near the marble columns. "You did not call, neither did you." His face remained expressionless. Mara lifted her suitcase. "Are you going to stop me?" "No." "Does he know I am here?" "Not yet." The private elevator opened. Mara stepped inside. Cole pressed the upper floor button. "You helped me bypass security. I made an error. I am sure Adrian will understand. He will not." The doors closed. When they opened again, the penthouse was silent. Mara entered. Nothing had changed. The dark furniture, the glass walls, the gray blanket folded over the sofa. A light burned in the kitchen. Adrian stood at the island with one hand beneath his jacket. He released the weapon when he saw her. For several seconds, neither moved. Mara noticed everything at once. The exhaustion beneath his eyes, the coffee beside his hand, the gray shirt folded on the counter behind him. "You did not call," he said. "I wanted to see if your security was as good as you claimed. It is not. Cole made a mistake. He will regret it." Mara placed her suitcase beside the elevator. Adrian's eyes moved toward it. "You found work." "Yes, I know. You said you would not watch me." "I did not." "Then how do you know the firm placed your name on its website?" Mara almost smiled. "I rented my own apartment." Adrian's hand tightened against the counter. "Good. I kept the keys." "Good. I can pay my own bills." His voice became quieter. "Good." Mara stepped closer. "I can sleep alone." Adrian did not answer. "I can walk through a city without a guard." Another step. "I can live without you." Something in his face closed. Mara stopped in front of him, and I still wanted to come back. Adrian looked at her as if the words had struck somewhere no weapon could reach. His hand lifted. He stopped before touching her. Mara closed the final distance herself. She took his wrist and placed his palm against her cheek. The rough warmth of his skin returned with such familiarity that her eyes burned. Adrian's thumb moved once along her cheekbone. "If you stay," he said, "this life will not become safe. I know. There will be guards outside my door." His mouth tightened. "In the lobby. No decisions about my life without me. Agreed. No reading my messages. I have never read your messages. No arranging my future without asking." A longer pause. "Agreed." Mara looked toward the penthouse entrance. "And the lock," Adrian followed her gaze. "The lock is on your side." She walked to the door. The deadbolt turned beneath her hand. The sound echoed through the apartment. Mara faced him. "I know." Adrian crossed the room. His huge hands rose to her face, but he waited until she leaned into them. His forehead rested against hers. For the first time since Mara had known him, his breath was unsteady. "I will not ask whether you are certain," he said. "Why, because you came back standing." Mara placed her hands over his scarred wrists. "I am staying, Adrian. Because you need protection, no. Because you are afraid to leave, no." His eyes held hers. Then why Mara drew him closer? "Because I know I can." Adrian kissed her. The kiss began with restraint, careful enough to feel like another question. Mara answered by rising onto her toes and pulling him closer. His control did not break into violence. It broke into surrender. Months earlier, Adrian's enormous hands had caught Mara before her face struck the conference room floor. But they had not changed her fate merely by lifting her. They changed it when they opened and allowed her to walk away. Now those scarred hands held her again. Mara did not flinch. She did not fall. And behind them, the door remained locked from her side.